I've been totally jamming on these non-alcoholic beverages here, but I put it in a wine glass, so it feels a little festive. This one's called Mood by Recess, and I thought it'd be a good one since we are going to talk dating. So why don't we kind of share a mood together? Ooh, there you go. Doesn't quite look like wine. Maybe it looks a little bit like beer. Anyway, cheers. Okay, so let's talk dating. So not too long ago, I interviewed Justina on my podcast, and we talked about her idea that led to her marriage. She had been divorced for a while, and she decided, okay, I'm going to go on 21 dates. I believe it was in 21 days, only first dates. I'm going to tell these guys these are just first dates, and I won't go on a second date until after all these first dates. And what she found was that guys actually started approaching her, like in the airport. I mean, it opened something up. And she didn't care on these dates what she looked like. She was more open to meeting different people. And actually, she ended up marrying this guy who was her 22nd date that I set her up with.
Justina, tell me about, you're now happily married.
Yes, so happily married. Again, thanks to you, because you set me up with my guy. But I had been single for quite a while, for 8 years after my divorce. And I was finally ready to date. 8 years after the divorce.
Were you dating before then?
I did date before then, but I realized I was dating the same guy as my ex-husband. And I went through 3 kind of short-term, when you're our age, a 6-month relationship is actually quite long for someone our age, because, at this age, we should know what we really want. I didn't. And so I think what I did, let me think about that. 3 years after the divorce, after these dating the same kind of guy, I realized I needed a reset. And so for 4 years after that, I just dated myself. And I really tried to focus on who I was, what I wanted my life to be, what kind of energy I wanted to attract to myself, doing a lot of prayer and really kind of going deep within. And I know I needed to do that work before I was ready for the right relationship. So that's why I really, truly applaud you, Shari, for taking this year, and you're processing with all of us as you're going through it, but going internal and really figuring out, how do you want to live? How do you want to set up your house? How do you make it a home, right? Yeah. What you envision for yourself. So you really do, that's, creating your own life, but also kind of dating yourself, taking care of yourself, pampering yourself. And so I did that. And then when I was ready, my chiropractor was like, no, you can't just start dating. You need to reset your radar. And he was really right. And so he thought it was kind of ridiculous that I was going to be doing 20 dates in 21 days. He's like, okay, that's a lot. But, I did want to intentionally reset my radar. And the beautiful thing about this program, and they're all first dates, and you don't do a second date until you finish all your first dates, was when it took the scariness of dating away. Because what you realize is how much of it is mutual attraction. And so it's not about you as a person as much as it is you with this other person. Are you right together? Okay. The second is it took the power away from rejection, because I knew, I wasn't going to say yes to another second date until I was done with my whole course, And third, it kind of puts the power back to yourself. You know what I mean?
When I filed for divorce, I was 53 years old, and I thought, it'd be nice to be in a relationship again, and my divorce will take probably a year or so. And I was right, it did take a little over a year to finalize. And so I got out my phone, put on calculator, and started adding this up, because I figured, okay, if I was going to be in a serious relationship and we wanted to take that relationship to the next level, at the time I was definitely thinking marriage, because that is all I had known. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to get remarried, I have to be in a relationship for at least a year. And I started doing the calculations, like 53 right now, 4, 5, 2. And then by the time I was done, I thought, I'll be 103 by the time I get remarried. So I thought, okay, I am not going to wait till my divorce finalized. I decided I was going to start dating during my divorce process. But I didn't want to get into a relationship. I wanted to learn a few things. I wanted to know, one, if it's true what some of my girlfriends have said, that there's no good guys out there. Okay, I found that is not true. 2, I wanted to know who's out there. 3, what it's like to date, how to date. And 4, if people would be interested in me. I didn't know. I had no idea. So I decided that because I had done my travels around the U.S. where I met with 50 women, one woman in each state to share a meal with, when I was meeting all these women, I realized that some women I just automatically clicked with. Others, while the conversations were fine, it wasn't that automatic spark. And I thought, okay, that's probably similar to dating with guys, right? If I really want to know what I like. And I'd been warned by my girlfriends. They said, be careful because you might get in a relationship that's just like your marriage because that's what you know. So I thought about this and I remembered a girlfriend of mine, Justina, who told me what she did. And I decided that her idea was awesome. I thought was awesome when I first heard it years ago. That coupled with what I experienced with when I met so many women over and over again, so close together and kind of knew and got used to, okay, I vibe really easily with this person. And is there a certain character type or what is it that makes some people vibe more and what do I like in a friend maybe? So I decided to do this with guys. And it went like this. I told my publicist that, okay, I have this idea. I'm going to go on first dates this year. And she and I are good friends at this point. We've worked together for about, well, now it's 6 years. At the time, about 5 years. And I told her this, and I had never been on dating apps before. And she happened to have a contact, and I didn't know this at the time, at Tinder. And she's on the East Coast. I was on the West Coast. And I told her this maybe 9 o'clock a.m. East Coast time. By noon, Tinder had given me a free, I forget what they call it, like platinum, their highest membership level, where I could go incognito if I wanted to. So I thought, okay, that's perfect. Let's do that. Well, they said, you have to first sign up for their regular membership and then they'll switch me over. So I signed up, put in my profile, and it took forever for them to switch me over. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to be here out in the open on Tinder, I might as well be on every app. So I signed up for all these different apps, and slowly over time, I like, that's not working for me. That's not working for me. That's not working for me. And I narrowed it down just to the apps that I liked. On my profile, you get to write a little blurb about yourself. And I said on the profile that I'm going through a divorce after 26 years of marriage, and I'm only looking for first dates this year. And if we vibe and we're both single the next year, we can go on a second date. So I was completely upfront. And I think that was good because everyone knows that when you're on a dating app, people are dating multiple people, right? I don't want to say a store, but people are dating a lot of people. But at least these guys knew that when I was going out on these first dates with them, I wasn't, going around sleeping with all these people and kissing all these people. I was just literally sitting down, sharing a meal and getting to know them. So if it ended up in a relationship, I felt there was a level of trust that was built there. And I just wanted to find out kind of how to date, who to date, what my range was. So if you haven't been on a dating app, you could say the age range, the height range, and a lot of other details. So I played around with that. And, I went younger, I went older. And I think it worked out. I was going to go out on a date a week, and I ended up on maybe 16 dates within, 6 weeks or something crazy like that. Maybe it was 8 weeks. And every one of those guys who knew my plan, except for one guy, asked me out on a second date within the week of the first date. So I think it kind of worked, and it definitely got me to see what I liked. At least I kind of thought it did. My worst first date, they were all good except for one. Well, there was one bad first date. And, because I was doing these just first dates, I was a little bit lax, and meaning, I wasn't going to be overly particular. And there was this one guy who lives in Portland, Oregon, and he was coming through Seattle for work, and we matched, and we're just going to go out for coffee, so no big deal. So he messages me, texts me like the night before we're supposed to meet for coffee and says, I should send you some updated photos. Well, that was nice enough because he did send them, and I wouldn't have gone out with him. And it's not me being a jerk. It's just, we all have attraction. You have to be attracted to somebody. And I would not have gone out with him with the way those updated photos look. But I thought, okay, we're just meeting for coffee. He might be really interesting because what I was interested in is that he's traveled a lot internationally. And so have I. So I thought, we can have a great conversation about our travels. Well, we met, and all of a sudden I learned that his ex-wife was Asian from Asia. His ex-girlfriend was Asian from Asia. He had 2 ex-wives. She was also Asian from Asia. And then as he was talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is like all over only Asian women, and even like Asian women who he can't really communicate with. And that's a problem for me. I thought that, okay, if you just date like a certain, like Asian women, let's just say like, white guy and you just date Asian women, I'm thinking, okay, you have a type. But it's different if you only date, I think, like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but if you only date somebody from a different country and you can't even speak their language, it feels like there's a control issue there. I could be wrong. Okay, I could be wrong, but that's what's going through my head. Anyway, that wasn't the worst part of it. The worst part was I was trying to be nice to him, and we clearly didn't have a connection. And I said something like, oh, you're going to find your person. And he actually said, well, if I don't, I'll just go to the Philippines and get married to somebody there. Like, okay, down the coffee, I'm out. So that was my worst first date. So I guess out of the grand scheme of things, it was only maybe an hour long. It wasn't terrible. Well, could have been worse. I have girlfriends with horror stories. When I was going through my divorce, and even in my first relationship post-divorce, I definitely thought marriage was the ultimate goal, in the sense that, well, why be in a relationship if you're not moving towards something? And in my mind, that something's marriage, right? And I've kind of changed my idea a bit. Not that I'm against marriage by any stretch of the imagination, because I think that'd be nice to be remarried at some point again. But also, I don't think it's a must-have in a relationship. I think in a relationship, a must-have, and, I might say something different a year from now or 2 years from now. So just know I'm growing. But I think for me, the big issue is that you have a partnership together, that you're creating a partnership and you're not a visitor in anyone else's life. And that was the problem with this one relationship that I was in. I was always going to be a visitor in his life. We weren't going to have a partnership. And that wasn't going to work for me. I wanted something different. I want something different. So whether or not that ends up as marriage at some point, or just a really committed partnership type relationship where you're working together towards similar goals and absolutely supporting each other, we'll see. I think the hardest thing of dating at this age is, for the most part, most of us have been divorced. And we've established ourselves at some level financially, whether for the better or for the worse. And we have, adult kids and friends. So it gets to be a little complicated, especially on the financial piece. I interviewed a guy on my podcast, Glenn, and he actually told me that marriage for men a lot of times is seen as, at least the second marriage, is seen as a liability, because in their minds, many times they lost everything during their divorce and they don't want to do that again. So they don't see the point of getting married if you're not going to have kids. And, if you're in your 50s or 60s, 90% of us, 99.9% of us are not thinking we're going to have kids. So that's a different piece, because in our 20s, we didn't have anything. At least most of us didn't. So it gets a little complicated with that. But I've kind of changed my tune about marriage versus when I was first getting divorced. So what do I need to work on? Well, I learned this during my divorce. I learned that I have codependent behavior tendencies. Maybe I'm saying that right. Less so now because I recognize it now. I had a totally different definition of codependency than what it is. I thought there's no way I'm codependent because I'm independent. Well, I learned you can be independent and still codependent in relationships.
Codependency at its core is when somebody gives too much of themselves into a relationship and at the same time receiving very little in return, right? And so they may have a pattern of trying to fix or save their partner. They take on the role of making their partner happy, which we all know that doesn't, doesn't really work. And they do that at the expense of their own happiness a lot of the times. At the real core stem of codependency is a fear of abandonment. So it's not really...
Really?
It's a fear of abandonment and kind of validating, seeking validation. And let's face it, we all need validation. We all want validation. But when it's at, you're sacrificing too much of yourself to get that, then you need to look at that. And so that's kind of what, the kind of broad definition of codependency is.
And I have no questions written out. So this is an organic conversation. So the reaction of my mouth dropping open when you said abandonment is real, because the whole talk I give, my whole discussion about traveling the U.S. to all 50 states is searching for belonging. And my backstory being I was literally abandoned as a child and found orphaned, in a cardboard box. And so, when you say, the stems or that could be the root, a codependent, is it a behavior or a personality type or?
I think it's more of a behavior because you can change, you can get to, it's not a personality disorder, but it is a behavioral issue that once you kind of recognize it, then you can kind of move away from it. But it takes a lot of self-talk and sort of self-connection to get to that place. Because a person who is codependent most likely is disconnected from themselves and don't have a strong sense of, who they are. And even if they do have a strong sense of who, they don't hold to it.
So that's something that I'm aware of as I move forward. I'm trying not to date right now, to tell you the truth, because I'm doing this big move to Dallas. I am so busy with work, in a good way. I love what I'm doing, and I really want to get to this place of independence. I'm enjoying all the people I'm meeting, being able to freely network, and just not worrying about not giving someone else my time when they're important to me. So this feels really good right now, and I'm trying not to date. That being said, I had a dating matchmaker, contact me from Dallas. She found me on LinkedIn, and she said that she searches for typically women, because most of her clients are men, that meet her clients' profiles. So we'll see. I said I'll talk to her when I get to Dallas, but we'll see. I've never done anything like that before, and I don't know, it's kind of interesting. We'll find out. But for now, I'm trying not to date. I'm just trying to get to Dallas. So what is my dating advice for anyone starting all over again in midlife and dating? I can just give you advice based on my limited experience. And it's a numbers game. Just like making friends, just like finding your dream job, finding your dream house, it's a numbers game. You have to put yourself out there. You have to, date some people that you might not initially first be attracted to, and find out exactly what you like. And don't be afraid to say next. And remember, it's a lot easier to say next and move on to someone else who might be a better fit without wasting everybody's time. It's a lot easier to do that earlier rather than later. So listen to your gut. Too many times, I think in friendships also, I talk about friendships a lot, but I think the same is true with dating. A lot of times we let our mind take over our gut, and we talk ourselves to staying in a relationship, or we talk ourselves into putting up with things that just don't feel right. I think it's really important to start listening to your gut when it comes to dating and relationships. And don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, because we're all growing and learning. But remember, when you're rejected, it's not about you. It's not don't think of it as a rejection. Just, we can't be everybody's cup of tea. We just can't be. I guess that's it. I am interested in your dating advice. Do you have any dating advice for me or for anyone else, who's watching or listening to this? I would love to know your dating advice. So please comment below, like, subscribe, follow. I also have in my show notes, I was going to do retreats in Dallas. I'm actually going to do a conference in Dallas. And I'll talk about this in another video, maybe next week, when I talk about starting this new career and really diving into this career purpose, speaking, MC work, and this conference that I cannot wait, that's coming to Dallas in 2026. Okay? Take care. Bye.